Hey guys, Erin here. Let's talk about this camera. This is the Canon Powershot G1X Mark III. The Canon sales page for this camera describes it as DSLR Performance in a compact body. I'm not sure I'd go that far, but this is a fantastic compact camera. Just a couple general stats about this camera. It has an APS-C sensor, which is actually the biggest sensor that Canon have ever put in a compact camera. It has 24.2 megapixels, full HD video up to 60 frames per second, no 4K video, FYI, and Canon's dual pixel autofocus for fast and accurate autofocus for stills or for video, whether your subject's staying still or moving. That autofocus is really good. Like, I'm just gonna... Can you hear that? I hope you can hear that beep. That's how quickly it's locking onto stuff. Granted, nothing in this room is moving. Maybe we should just... Find my hand, camera. This is a silly way to do it, but I have tested it out in the field. That autofocus is fast and it's accurate, so that's what you want in a camera, right? You want it to find stuff quickly. The lens on this camera is a 15 to 45 millimeter, 1.8 to 5.6, so that's the equivalent on a 35 millimeter of like a 24 to 70 lens, which is a decent range. I don't find that that limits me in what I can shoot. Granted, I don't do any like wildlife or sports photography or anything like that, but for kicking around town, taking photos of food and people and places, that's an excellent and quite standard amount of zoom range. English today, not good. This is definitely a good camera to take on holidays with you because you have the flexibility of all of your automatic, semi-automatic and manual controls all in one place. It's very flexible, it's very versatile. You could do a lot with this camera. You could take great landscapes, you can take decent portraits, you could take like excellent food photos, which, you know, it's a really good all-rounder. This is a good all-rounder right here. That f2.8 aperture at the wider end of the zoom scale does mean that you can get some nice depth of field in your photos. You'll get a little bit of background blur when you've got a subject closer to the camera, and that's something that I love in photos. So generally, I'm really happy when I can get that out of a compact camera. So that's a box ticked from me. Good job. Good job. The ISO range on this little thing is 100 to 25,600. When I read that, I was like, really though, like, is that really gonna be, what's the point of that? Generally on any kind of camera that's not a full frame DSLR, I absolutely will not take my ISO above like 1600, maybe 2000 if I'm really pushing it. And I was like, all right, funsies, let's take a photo at ISO 25,600 just to see what it looks like. And then I shot one here, like right behind me, of my cameras because I wanted something with a bit of like shadow, because that's usually where I see the noise show up the most when you're shooting in a high ISO. And the photo came out looking okay. And I was a bit confused for a bit, so I took a couple more photos. Then I realized as the camera displays the photo that you've just taken on the screen, there was that moment before the high ISO noise reduction kicked in where I could still see all the noise in there, and then it like smoothed out and I was like, oh, okay, that's what it is. I have noise reduction in camera turned on. So I went and had a look at that, and there's 3 levels of noise reduction, and it was on the middle level. I didn't test out the highest level. I tested it out on the lower one after that, but I was also shooting in RAW and JPEG, so never fear. I can show you what a picture straight out of this camera at ISO 25,600 looks like. It looks like this. Yeah. But it can do it. Good to know, right? Another thing the sales page says about the G1X Mark III is that, let me get this quote exactly right, the features enable a familiar DSLR level of instinctiveness and control. I mean, I agree to a point. I agree that the features are all where you expect them to be. They're easy to find. The sensor's nice and big. You can get decent image quality. But there are a couple of things about the camera, well, really actually just one thing that I think is kind of not intuitive, or maybe just like awkward. Okay, it's this guy, it's the mode dial right here. I'm not a fan. The placement of it is fine, it's normal, but the way you have to do it, you kind of got to press down on it while you turn in order to change your mode. And like, I have pretty small hands, so if it's fiddly for me, it's going to be worse for somebody with bigger fingers to deal with. You can kind of, like one finger, you can press your thumb down on it and sort of turn it. If you're going all the way around, then that's awkward. You can try and like get your index finger on there and turn it with your thumb. That's probably the easiest way for me, but I have fingernails as well, like they're not fake, they're just long. So that's kind of uncomfortable because like my fingernails sliding around everywhere. And then like the other option, you can kind of like press it down with your thumb and turn it with your finger, but then like your thumb's a bit too strong and then it's kind of hard to turn the dial. I just find that uncomfortable. Other manufacturers, like you don't need to press a thing while you turn it. Panasonic, the way they do it is you like press it to unlock it and then you turn it and then you press it again to lock it in. And maybe that takes a little bit longer, but I think it's more comfortable than this like dance that you have to do with your fingers over here. That's the only thing that I was like, hey camera, you're letting me down, bro. Like this is not on. I guess if you're shooting on auto most of the time, you're not really switching between modes, that wouldn't be an issue, but for me, that would really frustrate me. Every time I do it, I'm just like, no, this isn't fun. That said, everything else is in a good place. The wheel on the front that controls your manual settings, so you've got like, actually this is really cool, you've got the defaults to shutter speed on the front when you're in manual mode, and then the wheel on the back controls the aperture. ISO is within a menu, but because of the touchscreen you can just tap it, change everything from there. Likewise, if you would rather do everything with the front wheel, you can just tap the tap the aperture control, and then the front wheel will operate that. Tap the, oh, it's got little arrows on the side too, so you can like, I'm not used to touch screens. I'm still really getting the hang of all of this like ease of use. I'm used to things being more difficult. The exposure compensation wheel's in a really good spot. All of the back controls are fine. The record button's in a good place, and the on-off switch is in a spot where it's easy to access, but not so easy that you're accidentally switching the camera off while you're using it. Everything else is fantastic. It's just this mode dial that I'm like, no. Flip out screen. If you vlog, you'll like that. Actually didn't check up to this point. No mic input. It's got a little remote shutter, USB, HDMI, but no mic input, so that's something to keep in mind for people who vlog. It does have a hot shoe. This is one of those things where I'm like, if you have one of these cameras or something like it, could you please give me some insight? Like, have you ever actually put a flash or some flash triggers on your compact camera with a hot shoe? Or is this more to like hold other peripherals? I don't know. I can't see myself ever going out with a camera like this, putting a flash on it. Like, I feel like that would just be ridiculous. It would overpower the camera. It would make it really big and clunky and awkward and like, yeah, but it has it. So that's good to know if that's something that's important to you. Maybe there's a use for it that I just haven't thought of. So if you can give me some insight there, please let me know. This brings me to something that I really like about this camera's design, and that is the lens cap. I like having a free, like, separate lens cap rather than okay, for a bit of context here. This is my little point and shoot. If I'm being perfectly honest, I barely use this camera anymore. It's getting a bit old now. Focus. Onegaishimasu. I think it's because I have face tracking autofocus turned on. There we go. So this is the Nikon Coolpix S9900, and it has this kind of lens protection situation where you turn it on and it opens and you turn it off and it shuts, but like it can be persuaded open physically like this. So that's like the alternative to a fixed lens cap like this guy has, which I put, where did I put the lens cap? Just then. There it is. Okay. The difference here is, okay, this is really bad, don't do this, but I have been known to chuck this camera in my handbag when I'm traveling or when I'm just going out with friends or whatever, and not putting it in its case. I have a case, this one right here, but when it's kicking around in your bag and it's unprotected, stuff like keys, stuff like things that can damage your lens can just sort of prise this open, and I don't know that it ever actually got scratched, but I was terrified that it would. It's in pretty decent condition. There might be like a bit of dust, but it's just not as protected as with its own proper dedicated lens cap like this. You still want to put your camera in a case, okay? Protect your babies. This is not a cheap point and shoot camera, compact camera. But if you did have to chuck it in your bag without protection, this is going to keep it a lot safer than this. I would definitely recommend this camera to someone who's looking for a very high-powered, high-featured compact camera. I think it would be amazing if you were a food blogger, for instance. I used it to take a lot of photos of food. We went on some ramen adventures together, we did. And I think it's fantastic because you don't feel like a total idiot pulling like a massive camera out of your bag to take pictures of your food. I'm not a regular food blogger. I just kind of do it to test out cameras, really. But I feel like I'd feel a bit strange pulling out like one of my Nikon D800s in a cafe to take pictures of food. It does shoot RAW, so you got a lot of nice photo editing capability. The JPEGs that come out of it are quite nice too if you're not keen on editing. I mentioned this in my last review for the 1500D. The Canon Camera Connect app is really good, so that makes life a lot easier if you are someone who's creating content for social media with something like this and you want to just send the photos straight to your phone, edit them up in Visco or Snapseed or whatever your preferred editing app is, and then just have the content ready. You don't have to go through a computer, you can just, you know, send it to your phone, edit up straight away, good to go. Like that's great. That's kind of the dream, you know? If 4K video is important to you, we're kind of in this no man's land right now where half the cameras offer 4K and half the cameras don't, and you don't really need it unless I mean, you know, if you need 4K video. I like 4K video. If video is not super important to you, but you still like nice video, then this is a good choice. The built-in stabilization is pretty decent. You know, it's not gonna look like you've got it on a gimbal all the time, but it does a pretty good job. If you would like to read my thoughts on the Powershot G1 X Mark III in a little bit more detail, you can find that. I'll pop a link in the description down below on theiris.com.au, which is where all of my camera reviews end up. Big shout out to Canon for letting me play with this camera for the last 3 weeks. It's been really nice to have. Hopefully you learned something from this video. If you didn't, I'm very sorry to have wasted your time. If you liked it, like it. If you want to subscribe, you're welcome to. I hate asking people to subscribe. I'm like, you know how YouTube works. You don't need me to tell you to subscribe. Do you shoot with a compact camera? Do you have one? Do you have one that you don't use? Please tell me all about your compact camera adventures in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. If you'd like to see more of me, you can find me on Instagram at Erin Smith Photo, and I'm also on Twitter at Erin and the Light, ERINANDTHELIGHT. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you learned something, and if you would like to stick around, then maybe I'll catch you in the next video. See ya. I like how it sings to you when you turn it on.